So for me, Ryan, number 2 is Davante Adams. I think, just everything that he can bring to the table in terms of size, his ability to catch the ball, those back shoulder throws and his ability to sort of extend in the red zone and make difficult catches. I love his ability with his feet. He always seems to get both feet in no matter what situation that he's in. Obviously 1,553 yards last year, 10 touchdowns. But more importantly, the trust of Aaron Rodgers, who is quite the mercurial person, and it takes a while to sort of get his trust. And so if you're good enough over the years now to get the trust of someone like Aaron Rodgers, you must be doing something right. Obviously, he's a 5-time Pro Bowler, 3-time All-Pro. And it's going to be fascinating to see his transition to the Las Vegas Raiders. He's made some very interesting comments in the offseason that the gap between Carr and Rodgers from a talent standpoint and an arm talent perspective isn't really as vast and wide as one may think. I don't necessarily agree with that, but he is an absolute stud. And then number 1, this is a no-brainer. I don't really understand why this is even a debate. I don't understand why this isn't unanimous across all of the sites that I see. And it's, Mr. Triple Crown, Mr. Super Bowl MVP, Cooper Kupp. The greatest wide receiver season, arguably, in the history of football last year with 146 catches, 1,957 yards, the 16 touchdowns, everything that he did. To me, it was perhaps the greatest year that a wide receiver has ever had. I could probably take Cooper Kupp's one season last year and argue that it was probably a better career than all but maybe 50 wide receivers in the history of the NFL. It was that incredible. And just his knowledge of the game, his ability to run routes, but also to vary his routes. Cooper Kupp reminds me of the late 90s Pedro Martinez, where, Pedro had 6 different pitches, but out of his windup, you had no idea which pitch was coming because they all looked the same. And that's kind of how Cooper Kupp is when he runs his routes. Every route at the beginning looks the same. You don't know whether he's going to cut in, cut out, curl, go deep, post. He's just an artist who has mastered his craft. And to me, this is a no-brainer with Cooper Kupp at number 1.
Davante Adams for me at 2. Super talented. We know his story. 2nd-round pick out of Fresno State. Just always been at the top of his game. 1A, 1B in route running, or 1A, 1B, 1C. I think we can put Kupp, Keenan Allen, and Adams all in that kind of 3 category of route running ability. Kupp was 1, Davante Adams was 2, but then you also play the fact he's played with Aaron Rodgers his whole career. Let's see what it looks like now in a Josh McDaniels system that I wouldn't say isn't wide receiver friendly. I wouldn't say that, but it's not what Aaron Rodgers does to receivers per se, because it's just different. And obviously going from Aaron Rodgers to Derek Carr. So, but you can't understate how good Davante Adams has been in his career thus far, and we'll see what that production looks like now in Las Vegas. But yeah, the man of the hour, number 1, our Los Angeles Ram receiver, Cooper Kupp. I think there's no debate. I'll give myself a pat on the back here. Last year, I think it was after week 3 or 4 on this show, had a guest on. And I was like, right now I put Cooper Kupp top 5. By the end of the year, I think he'll be the best receiver in football. And everyone was like, oh, you can't have Coop. What are you talking about? Like, he's a slot receiver. He does this and that. And I think my guest was like, not like disrespectful, but just like, no, I don't see that any way. He's top 5. And now everyone's like, yeah, okay, this guy is definitely top 5. Probably should be number 1. With what he does, everything you said, but also in the blocking game, how important he is to setting up the running game and setting up other players. Obviously, I haven't been in practices with a lot of these other receivers, so it's a little biased here, but seeing Cooper Kupp in practice and what he is as a coach on the field, if you will, a player coach, coaching up Allen Robinson and doing things like that, where he just elevates the game of the players around him. And then also going from Jared Goff, who we still had a lot of success with Jared Goff, maybe didn't put up top 5 numbers with Jared Goff, but still put up over 1,000 yards receiving both like multiple times, even with the injured season. And then to jump from Goff to Stafford, who is a big jump, but it's not an Aaron Rodgers like jump, and have the greatest season ever and made Stafford that much better, and Stafford a perennial, potential all-pro candidate. And when you have Stafford, who played with Megatron, arguably one of the best receivers, And yet Cooper Kupp had far and away the best season ever with Matthew Stafford. That tells you how good Cooper Kupp is and how he can only get better and better. And in this offense, with Stafford feeling more comfortable, them getting more on the same page, we could see numbers like this happen often. I don't know if we'll hit those numbers again because of how historic they are, but he may flirt with those numbers every year going forward as long as him and Stafford are on the same page. So no doubt in my mind, Cooper Kupp number one.
I completely agree with you. And let me sort of address, some of the points of where in some of these rankings he's not number one. And usually the argument rests on the fact, and you mentioned this a little bit, is that he's purely a slot guy. And usually the argument against him is yards per reception is sort of sometimes slightly lower than some of these other guys, where Davante, you can sort of put him in different slots. Even a Deebo Samuel, you can put him in so many different slots. But my argument there is, first of all, in terms of the yards per reception, it was good enough to have the greatest wide receiver season in the history of football and win the Super Bowl and make the biggest plays in the biggest game there is in our sport. So, this is sort of for, folks that are overly indexed on analytics to sort of debate and argue. The bottom line is wins on the field, production on the field, points on the field, first downs on the field. That is all Cooper Kupp. And second, when you talk about slot receiver, well, guess what? Michael Jordan was a two guard in the NBA. No one would ever confuse Jordan as a point guard. No one is ever going to confuse Jordan as a power forward or a center or even a small forward, in much the way we sort of think other guys are more versatile. And he's still far and away the greatest basketball player of all time. So just because you play one spot on the field or on the court, when you are that exceptional at the thing you do, in much the same argument we have used for Tyreek Hill for other reasons, if you are that good at the thing that you do so much better than everybody else, it doesn't matter that you can do 3 or 4 different things. It all comes down to mastery of the one thing that you do so exceptionally well. And that's why Cooper Kupp is the best receiver in football. And I don't really understand any semblance of a debate.